Everybody, welcome to the latest Block Party. I'm your host, Mike Wahle. Thanks for watching. If you're enjoying, please subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Check out our Block Party podcast on our Process to Perform channel. Hit me up, Mike Wahle68 on Twitter, Process to Perform on Instagram. And as always, our show is sponsored by Bet Online. Bet Online continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one sports source for all online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen with the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball, National Hockey League, to UFC. We got everything. So head to BetOnline today and don't forget to use your promo code BLEAV, that's BLAAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline. The game starts here. Listen, this is a great litmus test coming up for both teams. Packers are playing in Minnesota, 3:25 Eastern on Sunday. The Packers, let's just get through the Packers-Saints game. I didn't even want to waste my time. The Packers thumped the Saints 34-0. Here's a quick recap. Packers did everything great, and no one on the Saints played particularly well. If you watch the recap last week, honestly, the game went pretty much how we predicted. The offensive line for the Saints had Spencer Rattler running around for his life all day. Josh Jacobs could be tackled in the first quarter. Complete domination by Green Bay. So that the Saints team is actually one that I think that'll be a really unique coaching candidacy place next year. The NFC South is always bad. And I shouldn't say they're always bad, but they just don't look like a dominant league right now. Baker is playing, I think, the best football of all those quarterbacks, although Michael Penix just kind of showed us something. But you're not looking at a stacked division. So that's always going to be a place where a coach can go and say, hey, we've got some pieces here, but they've got some older guys on defense. Obviously, there are two defensive guys that everybody talks about, Demario Davis and Cam Jordan they're old by NFL standards now. And they've got some pieces on offense that Alvin Kamara is injured again. Obviously, they have some young receivers. Derek Carr, you just never know if Derek's going to get you over the top, although I've always thought he's a really, really good quarterback. So there's a lot of questions there. I think that's an interesting job, but nonetheless, 34-0. It's like watching that game last night, the Ravens and the Texans. You think that's going to be a good game, and you go, holy hell, they scored 2 points on a safety. And I mean, for a team with that much talent on offense, and I know they've got a lot of injuries, but the core, they're going to have to get right, I think, mindset-wise before they. At least some very key players on their team are going to have to get right mindset-wise before they go into the playoffs, man. Otherwise, it's going to be tough. And how good does Lamar Jackson look? I mean, Jesus H. But moving on, this game, the Vikings team is really, really good. We got what do we have? An 11-4 team and a 13-2 team. I think at the time of this recording. Last week, the Minnesota Vikings went to Seattle and they beat what I think is a good Seahawks team. And if you're going to ask me one thing that you should know about the Vikings, and this doesn't bode well for this weekend, but if we're just thinking of a litmus test for the Green Bay Packers, their defense, really, really good, they get a huge bump at home because of the crowd noise. And I think their crowd noise alone, this is since the time I played, this accounts for at least a few quarterback hits, quarterback pressures a game. They also do a really good job of attacking the weak points, or I should say the weak individuals of their opponent. So last week, for example, the weak link has been the right guard for the Seattle Seahawks. They lined up, and the right guards, the interior offensive line, they've had the injuries and etc. And so they got Van Ginkel, who is a good player, but hasn't gotten a lot of notoriety this year, especially from a pass rushing standpoint. He was all over the field, A gap, B gap, just absolutely killing guys as a stand-up guy who's a spinner who's playing around. And they pressure and they do these, sim pressures, and then they bring guys. And I think the big thing to understand is anytime you line up against, a 7 or 8 man front on the line of scrimmage, you have to be able to take advantage regardless if they're coming or not. And so in turn with all those pressures, when you see Geno Smith's numbers last week, when he had time to throw, I think they had, by my count, including penalties, they had 12 plays of 15 yards or more. So they had 12 explosive plays on offense. That's a lot. Geno threw for 314 yards. He had 3 touchdowns. He did have 2 picks, and those picks do come when pressure's in his face. So they're kind of live by the sword, die by the sword. But I think for the Packers in particular, it's going to be very interesting to see how well that pressure scheme does in Minnesota with that crowd noise, playoff atmosphere, against a much better pass protecting offensive line that's healthy, and really overall a much better scheme. The one thing the one job I'd say this defense does just extremely well, they stop the run. They're number 2 in yards per carry at 3.9 yards per carry. They're number 2 in yards per game at 87 yards per game. And part of that's because their offense has been scoring points. Part of that's because their offense is methodical. They do not, they can take big chunks, but they can also drive the ball down the field. So you're in a position, and we saw this, the guys talk about this in the Houston game last night, where offensively you have to go into the game thinking like, all right, I have to match score for score. These guys are going to score 24, 25 points a game. So what does that look like on a defensive against their defense? How many points do I have to count for? And then listen, as a to pull back the curtain a little bit, when you start looking at a game plan, you're kind of looking for like, how many points do I need to score? And then like every game, you have a certain amount of you're expecting to have a certain amount of possessions. And so you go into the game, you go, I can't remember the exact number. Let's say in a game, I'm expecting to have 13 possessions a game. Well, if I have 13 possessions a game and I need to score 30 points, there's some sort of combination with 4 touchdowns and a field goal. There's some sort of combination that I got to go, 5 of these possessions I got to score. And in order to up the chances of me scoring on 5 possessions, I want to get that from 13 to 14 or from 12 to 13, whatever that number is. And so now you start thinking about, okay, how do I steal a possession? Is it through special teams? Is it through turnovers? Is it through just being able to go 3 and out a couple times with their defense? And if I look and I see I can't do that, well, how do I steal these possessions? Well, I'm going to have to score faster, which means I have to maximize the time I do have the ball. I can't run the football because the clock keeps running. Even if I get chunk plays, the clock keeps running. I'm in real trouble. So I really like this defense. I have to, a couple guys you just want to talk about, they don't get a lot of credit. Jonathan Grenard's a great player. I just love everything he's done since he was I used to watch him in Houston all the time. I think Harrison Phillips is a very, very underrated player at the defensive tackle position. I don't know if he's necessarily a great Jerry Tillery too. I don't think if they're great pass rushers, but I think they just do a really good job in the scheme that they're being asked to play in. Jonathan Bullard does a good job. Van Ginkel had a great week last week, but their secondary is pretty good. They brought over Stephon Gilmore, Byron Murphy. They brought over from Arizona. He's a good. Harrison Smith, I know, has been hurt. Shaq Griffin's over there from Carolina. They've got 44. I can't remember his last name now, from Minnesota. He's a draft pick from Minnesota, but they're a very, very good team. And they just listen. They've got a great defensive coordinator. He'll probably be a head coach next year again. And these guys are just playing high level. Let's take a look. I got offense first, so I got to switch this over because I'm foolish. All right, here we go. So we look at Seattle, they go bunch. And listen, one of the predications how did I say that wrong? One of the things that the Minnesota Vikings will do is they're going to show and roll coverages a lot. You see they're trying to poach on the backside here. When you poach on the backside and you give a good player, I think this is DK, free release, and you're poaching the backside bunch look with that safety, you're just asking for trouble here. So what I mean by that, we're reading 3 on the other side here by this safety at the 12-yard line between the hash and the numbers. He's got his chest pointed the wrong direction. They're just going to throw the fade to a unit. Touchdown. So there's opportunities like this abound. So you go empty here. And this is just one hell of a throw, quite frankly. And I think the number of the plays actually, Geno really thread the needle a couple times in this game. But you look at if I go back to inside slot on this trips look here, they're manned up all over the board with two really, really deep safeties. And you'll see them play at times really deep. Now, this is a comeback game for the Seahawks. So there's part of that is kind of baked in. But you can make these window throws. Now they start walking up. They got Van Ginkel stood up here. And when you go motion and you've got all these players here, there's a lot of traffic to be sorted out. So they go motion to bunch, and they're going to essentially run a pick, a double pick with the motion guy and the tip of the spear, and they're going to run Jackson Smith-Njigba around for the wheel. Minnesota gets caught up. And again, I think as much motion into bunch looks and then just having those different releases is going to help you, especially with these guys. There's two things that it does when it gets a team like Minnesota. One, it declares the pressure very quickly. And then two, I think a lot of this stuff is just hard to get out of it, especially with the skill set that the Packers receivers have. We see this all the time where Jordan Love is really good at this point of figuring out who's going to be open early on those plays and getting them the football. So you got those two guys in the A gap. You got five guys essentially playing this coverage here. You got two obviously pressed up, but really you got three deep. And of course you got man on the slots, right? So technically you're calling this single high, but I always look at these as like, this looks like an umbrella coverage to me, just by the way they line up and everybody bails. I'm talking about those two slot guys. And so listen, if you have time, when there's so much space between the first level, and there really is no second level, and the third level, because those third level guys are bailing, you're gonna find holes in the operation. The question always is gonna be, can you hold up pressure wise? It's Jordan Love will be able to throw and hit open receivers against this football team if he has time. Now, this is an interesting scheme, and you just always wonder, how sustainable this is. They didn't have very many good runs in this game, and when you're playing against a team that's holding teams to under 4 yards a carry and 87 yards per game, you got to kind of figure out things that are going to work, and a lot of that has to do with their interior defensive line. You would think you'd run a lot of doubles. They do a good job at taking on double teams. So sometimes it's better just to fold this tight end back in and just get a free hitter on that backside backside linebacker, and then just single block every once in a while. And again, they had two good plays on this, but quite frankly, there just wasn't a lot of good runs on this last tape to look at. But they see this fold block by the tight end twice. Now he's leading up on that backside backer, and they don't even block. I go back, I said, if this works, because it's like they don't even account for the play side linebacker in this scheme. They just push everybody on the line of scrimmage to the right, single block with Tomlinson. They block out with Cross. Really, Cross makes the block here by opening the hole. Tight end comes in, and that's all you get. Now, this is the big deal with the Packers or any team that's playing a team that likes to show so many guys up. If you're going to go 7 up, there's a guy on the right you don't see, and you got double A's. Regardless if they bail or not, you got to be able to win right now, because there's a gap. Again, we saw it on the sideline copy. There's a gap between that first level of defense. There is no second level right now. And then that third level, there's this monster gap. Even if they're bailing, you just don't have time to get back when the receivers are running full speed downhill. So find your time and make the plays when you can. This is an opportunity where Geno just throws a bad ball or a bad coverage. But you see, it's a question of finding time. And look how much space there is in the middle of the field. I think I'll show one more of these. Might be here. So we go under center, go play action pass. And this is what I'm talking about. You have to use the field against the Minnesota Vikings. A lot of teams are going to say, oh, yeah, quarterback likes throwing in routes. Yeah, like no shit. Everybody likes throwing in routes because in routes are not as hard to throw. It's right in front of you. Distances aren't as bad. The ball doesn't tail off. You can step into the throw a little bit easier. Of course, they like throwing the ball across the middle, but you got to use the entire field against a defense, in particular, one that has so many pressures, because you have to spread it out and give the quarterback something to look at. This right here is just a jumbled mess, and you're going to make plays because you have good players, but use the entire field and give yourself a chance at success. Now, this is one of the picks, and it's like, why did you have an interception? Well, because you got everybody covered. You're all jumbled up in the middle of the field. They bring the safety late, and instead of throwing it to the check down where the safety's coming from, he's already turned the other way. And instead of just throwing this ball out, and this is why, teams lose games, those are the other team. They're going to stress Josh Myers. They're going to try to stress him, and they'll do that by putting a guy up over the top of him. Especially if they see the way we've been snapping the ball for the last couple of years, right? Where you put your head under, blah, 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 blah. The center's got to do all the work. And then they're going to run a lot of pick stunts. And they'll do 2- and 3-man games, and they'll use the center, and they'll try to always involve that guy. And they might be able to just do it with a pick on the center. They might be able to do it with a pick on the guard, and that player comes around off the tackle. But they are going to try to do that as often as possible. And the reason they do it is because pressure equals picks, get the ball out of Jordan Love's hands. And then there's just a couple of these, again, throwing the football away. And all of that is, as you can see here, so Van Ginkel stood up. I don't think, me personally, I think the Packers offensive line is much better than the Seattle offensive line in terms of pass protection across the board. Not necessarily at every position, but across the board. Like this play, Van Ginkel right here, there is no way on God's green earth that if he is double teamed initially, he's going to get just a cakewalk here to the quarterback. Okay, so you see what I'm saying is you see some of this on tape, and you go, oh yeah, you got to go, because you look at the stats. You watch the film and you go, maybe that works. I just don't see it working. Here's a question: if you got to win pre-snap, Jordan Love has to know if we're going to shoot, and the receiver has to be aware and take the open space. You usually try to throw right now to where the guy came from, and they don't have anybody paying attention. The ball should be out in the pocket, top of the field here. You got the 2x2 on the top of the field. Right now, turn your eyes around. The linebacker left. The ball's out. This is how you win football games, right? That's a 10-yard completion with the opportunity to run after the catch. Instead, he takes a sack. Difference in football games right there. Now, is that Geno's fault? Is that the receiver's fault? I have no idea. But I do know that the operation has to be, if the linebacker leaves, turn your head around and quarterback, get him the football. It's a real simple operation. When you're running all these deep routes in particular, Packers do this from time to time, not really as much, but Seattle likes to run some deeper stuff. Minnesota likes to run some deeper stuff. When that happens, you have to have answers for when they bring pressure, and that's probably the easiest one. So defensively, I really like their defense. It's hard not to like it. Now, offensively, as you turn and look at the Minnesota offense, and really that's what everybody talks about. Obviously, Kevin O'Connell's a great play caller. They've got some real weapons. Obviously, wide receiver. The thing that pops out on tape is they run under center play action pass for big chunks. I think this team's fourth in the league in yards per attempt at 8.3 yards per attempt, and they utilize the under center looks as well as anybody in the National Football League. And they're using them to exploit time and exploit space for that talented wide receiver tight end stable. Okay, they have Hawkinson, they have Addison, they have obviously Justin Jefferson. Look, excuse me. So under center, why do we love under center play action? Well, it makes the read easier for the quarterback. It gives the quarterback in the context of time that you have to stand and watch the rush come at you. It minimizes that amount of time you got to go through the whole cadence of turning your back, looking for the handoff, a little bit deeper drop, etc. Offensive line, you get a run cell. There's at least one side of the football that can play this aggressively and try to play through and try to show run. You're going to have chip outs on the way out. You can run. It's usually not a 5-man protection. So there's a lot of positives to running play action pass. Obviously, you have to be able to run the football. there's a lot of positives out of play action pass, but you help the wide receivers exploit space. And this team likes to run deeper routes. There's a number of times on the field where you're like, every single route doesn't break for at least 15 yards. And you can only do that, I think, effectively when you're running play action pass. They just do a really nice job of it. So the Packers are going to have to decide, do you want to pressure Darnold and have a quick game and then take your chances with Jefferson and company, especially if, is Alexander out, who's healthy in the secondary. So there's that. I mean, we've seen how many times you've seen deep crossers kill the Packers over the course of the years because they're taking the other option, which is let's play back. Let's try to keep everything in front of you. I've said O'Connell, Matt LaFleur, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, some of the best play callers in the business are in the NFC. Darnold's playing really good football. He certainly had a resurrection for his career. What stood out in the Seahawks game was how many plays Sam Darnold made while on the move. So he was throwing the ball off schedule, scrambling from the pocket. I thought it was huge in the game. I'll show you a ton of plays here where he gets back. He's got to move around the pocket. Maybe he's escaping a little bit, usually going forward. So the question is, can the Packers? Aaron Jones is having a good year. He's been, he's had some injuries. He's a wonderful running back, and he'll make plays when there's plays to be made, and they can use him in the passing game, the screen game. They can use him in certainly use him in the running game. But I think the real question for the team is, and as you kind of again litmus test, can the Packers get enough pressure? Can they win one-on-ones? I've been saying this for 2 years. The right side of this line, Ingram and O'Neal, they're not that they're bad players. O'Neal's not a bad player, but I watch every time and I can't imagine that our guys aren't beating him. But every time I get done with the game, I go, oh, I was wrong again. You watch the pass set and you go, why are we not winning? We're starting to win some more one-on-one stuff. Is this another kind of step up the ladder where we go, this guy's he's certainly better than the last 2 players you played against over on the right tackle position, and the right guard position. Are you going to be able to have some effective rushes that at least flush him out of the pocket? And can we flush him laterally? Can we flush him sideways as opposed to downhill? And then can the secondary keep the eyes on the receivers and let the second level guys, the linebackers, the defensive ends, can we have them account for Sam Darnold? Because he made a ton of plays last week where eyes go to Darnold. Darnold's eyes stay on the receiver. He throws a touchdown, throws a long pass. That might be the determining factor in the game. Let's take a quick peek. So we go under center, play action pass, flush from the pocket. Now, you see the safety loses eye discipline during the scramble. So up top, easy throw, gets beat clean. Should never get beat there. But that's the NFL, right? You see the quarterback, he starts moving. It's how easy is it to get your eyes caught and not have an understanding where the receiver is, even if it's a guy like that. We go under center again. Now you got under center plus movement, and you're just giving time for Jefferson to get over the top. You just want him to get on that deep crosser. So he's got time. He's moving up in the pocket. He's almost at the line of scrimmage when he throws the football. This is a long developing play, and he has time. Again, gets his drop, shows the ball, turns around, gets flushed up a little bit. You see a lot of defensive ends being able to press high on the pocket, and he steps up, but you don't see what you want to see is the collapse and make him exit out the back. We'll see if the Packers are able to do that this week. We go under center again, and you just see there's a lot of deeper throws because of the space between the linebackers and the secondary. There's just so much space there. Hawkinson runs the dig now, and he runs that at 16 yards. And there's just nobody in between. It's not a window throw. It's throw to the guy with man coverage. It's easy, relatively speaking. Under center, we got a 2 tight end look here. Play action pass. And now you've got 1, 2, 3 on 1, 2, 3, and they're just going to leak Aaron Jones out to the sideline. Everybody's accounted for. Linebacker lost him. Got caught staring at the quarterback again. He's out. Now we got another 10-yard gain. So Darnold's doing a great job of just identifying, throwing to the open man, finding the guy who's got the mismatch. Throwing. I think they just do that really well. We go shotgun, tight end attached, and trips look on the bottom. And now we get in his grill a little bit. We saw this last time we did the show, the preview for the Vikings. Not nearly as effective, in my opinion. Now, I don't know what the numbers say. I'm just talking about what would you rather see all day? I'd rather see him in shotgun all day and have to kind of bounce around the pocket and get antsy and see the rush coming. One of the things that people don't talk about is like the quarterback having to look at the rush versus going to under center play action pass and not having to look at, like, that one of those is a lot harder than the other, just from a mental standpoint. So they shift the nose tackle over. The Packers got to be watching this play and going, okay, we can do this, because the left guard sets flat. And so they just run a quick pick stunt, real easy, and he can't get across. So they're just running, we call this a mesh tackle game. When I mean mesh, I mean 91's not going to pick the guard. The guard's going to pick himself with his crap stand, with his set. So he sets flat. Williams goes in. The center can't come over. Guard's there, but not good enough. And they get meshed. So 91's just trying to beat his guy. And you're basically saying, I think I can beat the center. I'm going to make sure that the guard can't help because he sets so flat. We got under center look again. Got to be sound here. So they're going to run the toss crack, and they're going to run this cat fire by the wide receiver up top. That hanger, I think that's a safety on the logo. That hanger's got to get outside leverage, and he's got to get it now. They find the cat, go. Can't get butted up and pushed off the ball by the wide receiver. So he loses leverage and vertical leverage. So he starts on the 41. He ends up on the 43, 44. That's a big deal. That's a lot of time and space for Aaron Jones. He gets another 8 yards after he passes that safety. Look at it from this perspective again. There's no need for that. You cut the play, get it now. You run in the cat. You have the outside contained. Got to take it. Alley player has to make the play. They motion out. And instead of being high, this is what we're always talking about with Green Bay, compress the damn pocket. You don't need to be over the top. You want Sam Darnold to, if Sam Darnold ran behind the defensive ends to escape the pocket all the time, you'd be thrilled out of your mind, as opposed to being able to run forward. But because you run high, you just step into the throw. And again, look how much space there is here. The 30-yard line is where you got the nearest lineman or running back or linebacker. And we're going to break on the ball at the 15, the 12, and come back to the 17, 18 to catch it. Under center again. They're going to stress this first play of the game. Under center, they're going to stress this corner by running this guy inside. He follows. Whoops. Easy play. 10-yard, 9-yard gain. I think this is their first fourth down play on their first series. So I don't have a great picture of this, but they're going to run the pick up front. It's really just a scissors concept, but they run the scissors and then they run the out with Hawkinson here. This is a 4th and 3, I believe. So they run the scissors and then they run the out. Right? And there's nobody who's going to make that play. We saw this kind of with Josh Jacobs. We threw it a little faster, but it ends up just, for me, this is literally just a toss sweep. It is showing a different way to do it. I like how teams are doing this now. So they bring the fullback across, and they let him release over the top, talking about Jones, and they just throw in the ball right now. It's just effectively a toss sweep. The center gets out. Easy. I think it's easy yards for yard average, but I really think it's an effective way to get the ball outside. Then you just love this with the eye discipline again. So they run the fake toss. They don't even have Darnold fake it. They just run, the fullback comes across. They run the running back on the toss. The linebacker, eye discipline. And so they just bring the receiver right underneath. He sits down in the zone, touchdown. And that's really all these guys are doing. I mean, they're doing a really nice job of executing some simple concepts at a high level. They have a very good understanding of who they are. We always talk about with the Green Bay Packers early in the season, understanding what the skill set of each receiver was, for example, what the skill set of Josh Jacobs was, for example, and trying to get, kind of get in sync. I think Kevin O'Connell has a very good understanding of the skill set of Sam Darnold, the ability of their offensive line, and then certainly the skill set of their amazing receiver core and tight end core with Hawkins. So, very, very good team. I think they average 25 points a game or something like that. They're I don't know which team gets more recognition, but they're both extremely talented. A couple questions from the fans again, guys who put these in. I always appreciate it. I just got a couple here. Packers play to win or rest for the playoffs. I think I know the answer, but I think you always play to win in these football games. I just don't know how. I don't imagine going out in a Minnesota football game and not playing to win. Now, there's still a question if they're going to be the 5 seed or the 6 seed. And if Minnesota loses both with the head-to-head, there's a way that they can be the 5 seed. I think you're looking at the Falcons or the Rams. If it's me, I'm going even Penix goes and plays well, but I'm looking to play the Falcons over the Rams because I don't want to play Stafford in the playoffs because you just don't know what's going to happen with Stafford. And I think they got everybody healthy over there. So life looks a bit different when the Rams are healthy. I really like the defensive line for the Rams, quite frankly, and you have to go there. So there's an advantage there. The 2 defensive ends they got are really, really – Jared Verse is playing really good. He's a little bit slow. He slowed down a little bit. I think this is his rookie year out of Florida State, but he's playing really well. He's playing really well earlier in the season. But all things being equal, you'd prefer, I think, to go play against the Falcons than go play against the Rams. But first and foremost, you're always trying to win football games, especially when you're playing a division rival and a team like the Vikings. And there's just no time to go half-ass with anything and get guys hurt and blah, 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 blah. And you're just quite frankly, you're not a good enough as well as you played against the Saints. By the way, the disparity in like good and bad teams in the National Football League now is ridiculous. For a team for a league that likes parity, like I don't know in the last 20 years I've ever seen the difference in level between like the Saints, the difference between the Saints and the Eagles or the Packers or the Vikings or the Lions. You're just like this. That is one of the worst productive football teams I've seen in a long time. And there's a handful of them out there. You see the game between the Ravens and I think the Texans quarterback's just going through something right now. But that game last night was Lamar, and the Texans are a good team. They're in the playoffs. But the Lamar Jackson and the Josh, they're on different levels right now. And it's like it used to be like this, and now it's absurd. I just don't think you can take a week off right now in the situation with the age of the Packers, the playoff experience of the Packers, all of that. You're playing to win this game. How do you think the Packers can attack the Minnesota defense? Well, I think first and foremost in Minnesota is a different ball game. Snap count, identification of pressure, communication with the center, all of that. Who's making the calls? Is Josh Myers have his head under the center? All of those things matter when you're in Minnesota. When is his head down? Does he have to look up and snap the football? Is what I'm trying to say. All of that matters. Protection calls and communication. If you can, one-on-one, I don't feel like they have a team that you're really stressing over as far as pass pro, and you can throw the ball against them if you can stand upright. They get pressure on in crucial situations and make you throw. So do you have answers when it's 3rd and 8? Do you have answers? If it's 2nd and 15, do you have answers to get down to 3rd and 6? Do you have answers at 3rd and 6, 4 to 6 that are in the run game? So are there different ways for you to attack this defense that don't involve Jordan Love having to drop straight back? I think that's the real the question. If the answer is yes, I think you have a chance at attacking that defense for sure. And then we got a bunch of things about the playoffs and the seedings and this and that. And I don't think there's any way that the playoffs go through Green Bay. Well, they're the 6th seed, so how does that work? If they're the 6th seed, does anything go through Green Bay? I mean, I guess the 7th seed, so the 7th beat the 2. There's some weird way there, but I have to be honest with you. Some people pay a lot of attention to the playoff seedings, and this like I'm meat and potatoes guy, man. Who's next week? Like who we got next week? Who you got in the playoffs? The rest of it doesn't really matter. There's no reason to look for, especially this time of the year. There's just no reason to look forward. If you're in the locker room, I promise you're worried about the guys in front of you this week. You're not worried about next week. You're not looking forward to next week. So I don't know if I ever lost that, or I should say, I don't know if I ever became a more sophisticated follower of sport. Favorite by one. You got a chance, guys. Thanks for watching. Mike Wahle 68 on Twitter, Process Perform on Instagram. Check out the show, subscribe, rate, review, smash that subscribe button. And thanks to Bet Online. Guys, enjoy the game.